What is going on, guys? Christian from the Lay and Pray MMA podcast. Doing another solo episode this week. So we're just going to do a quick recap of last week's card, which was headlined by Islam Makhachev and Bobby Green. I'm actually going to take my glasses off here because the reflection is bugging the shit out of me. So that was highlighted by Bobby Green and Islam Makhachev. It was a great card overall. I was really impressed with Terrence McKinney, which was one of the fights that I had talked about in the prelims. Just to stay focused on that, make sure you paid attention to it. Also, the Alejandro Perez and Jonathan Martinez fight was a good fight as well. Just taking a look at the main card here. You had Armin Petrosyan versus Gregory Rodriguez, which was a back and forth barn burner. Both guys laid it all on the line. There was, just tons and tons of strikes landed by Armin. Gregory, he did a lot better in terms of the ground game. He went for more takedowns. Didn't land as many strikes. He was outstruck pretty badly. But both guys left it all out there, put it all on the line. And it was a really fun fight to watch. In the next fight, it was Arman Tsarukyan versus Joel Alvarez. And Arman Tsarukyan busted him up bad. There was blood pouring everywhere. And Arman looked phenomenal. I think right now, if I remember correctly, he was just outside the top 10 in the lightweight division. I think with that performance in the finish, he was able to get a TKO in the second round. I think that should propel him up into the top 10. Next in the women's flyweight division, it was Ji Yeon Kim versus Priscilla. God, I can't remember her last name. Let me look here. Sorry, y'all. Priscilla Cachoeira. And this one, it was a unanimous decision in favor of Priscilla Cachoeira, and I didn't understand how in God's green earth that was a unanimous decision in favor of Priscilla, because G landed a shitload of strikes, 171 total strikes, 170 significant strikes. Meanwhile, Cachoeira, she got over the 100 mark with 102, and she got the lone takedown in the fight. But I really thought that G did enough to win that fight, and it was back and forth. Both girls were swinging. It was a lot of fun to watch. In the co-main, it was Misha Serkinov versus Wellington Turman, and at first Wellington was, he did pretty well in the first round. There were points where it looked like he was going to be in some trouble because he was taking some shots from while he was on bottom, and it was like, okay, well, you can't keep taking these shots, and he was able to pull it out. I think he ended up winning by armbar. Was it armbar? I think it was armbar, and still really young in terms of his age. He's really young, but he does have experience in the octagon. That was a big fight for him, and he was able to pull it through, got a finish, so look for him to go up in the rankings. And then in the main event, it was Islam Makhachev versus Bobby Green, and obviously I picked Islam to win because Islam had a full camp. He was preparing for Beneil Dariush, and there's a big difference in terms of preparing for Bobby Green versus preparing for Beneil Dariush. Beneil obviously is more of a ground guy. It would have been fun to see how those ground games canceled one another. And, didn't happen. We saw Bobby Green. He was able to, I don't think he really landed many shots. Yeah, in total 11. He was 11 to 15, so high percentage. But as soon as Islam got his hands wrapped around Bobby's butt and was able to lift him up, take him down, it was just complete control on the ground. It was, Dagestani, very Khabib-like, hold you down, punish you, and make you regret getting to that point. There weren't as many flashes as I would have liked to have seen from Bobby, just because it didn't make it out of the first round. It was 3 minutes and 23 seconds into the first round when it got stopped. But kudos to Bobby Green. I hope he got paid. I hope that he got the respect on his name, because the guy, he's a gangster. He stepped in, and he had a phenomenal, the past couple performances. I mean, with Rafael Fiziev, with Ali Quinta, and with Nasrat Haqparast. So hopefully he's able to get another good fight, and he's able to either headline another fight night card or get another good spot on the main card in a pay-per-view. But just kind of stepping into just talking about Islam, it was slated because Rafael Fiziev, he's out of his fight with RDA, which was supposed to headline a fight night card it wasn't last week, but the week before, and they moved it to the co-main for UFC 272, which is what we're going to talk about, headlined by Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. And so Rafael Fiziev is out with COVID-19. Islam, there was talks like who's going to step in. Islam versus RDA is a fight that was supposed to happen. It never happened, and they were trying to get it scheduled, and then they couldn't come to any sort of agreement on Islam's side. And so luckily, Renato Moicano is going to step in and fill in for Rafael Fiziev. So it's going to be RDA versus Renato Moicano in the co-main. And the interesting thing with this is Dana White essentially said, Islam's going to get the next title shot at lightweight. And because of the stuff that happened recently, it sounds like Dana White's going back on that. And he's saying, well, I think I want Islam to fight Beneil Dariush, and that's going to be the next fight that Islam has. I don't know if it's just some fallout based on the negotiations that they had, and Dana White's just like, I was going to give you the next shot, but never mind. I'm gonna put you up against Beneil Dariush because I really want to see that fight. Is essentially what it came down to. So in other news, unfortunate news with Cain Velasquez and him getting arrested, I believe, on attempted murder charges. What's rumored right now is that, well, first off, those of you that are MMA fans, like long-time diehards, you know who Cain Velasquez is. For those of you that are casual fans, Cain Velasquez was the former UFC heavyweight champion. He defeated Brock Lesnar to get the heavyweight title, and then he ended up losing it to Junior Dos Santos, won it back from Junior Dos Santos, defended it, and then ended up losing to Fabricio Verdum. And then after that, he was pretty much riddled with injuries, made a comeback, got knocked out by Francis Ngannou, and ended up hurting his knee in the process. Then kind of switched over to professional wrestling, was doing some stuff with WWE, did some stuff with AAA wrestling in Mexico, I believe. And so essentially retired from fighting. With the reports from the other day, I believe it was on Tuesday or Wednesday, that he had been arrested for attempted murder. What was reported was that his daughter had been molested by this guy, and Cain essentially did a drive-by shooting on a guy. This is the reports. This obviously it's not. This is just rumored. So, but Cain did a drive-by and was trying to shoot the guy who molested his daughter, but it was the guy's father that ended up getting shot. He was in the car as well, and he got shot and struck in the arm, I believe. There was a total of 5 shots that were fired, and my understanding, it was like close to a school, which is crazy. Obviously, in terms of that, if what is reported is true, I think any parent, I'm not a parent, but I think I have an understanding in terms of I was a cop, so I can understand some things and I understand the law, so I can see it from both sides. Like, you know, as a parent, you want to protect your child and get, get back at somebody who hurt your child or, made them feel unsafe. And that was just not the way to do it in terms of the law. It's, think of other people that could have been hurt by that. There's, it's just a super unfortunate event. And hopefully Cain, if what is being reported, Cain doesn't have to serve like a huge sentence. I believe in the state of California, because it happened in San Jose or outside San Jose, in the state of California, something like that, you get minimum 20 years to life for attempted murder. I think it was attempted murder in the second degree. So that's a serious felony. And hopefully if something happens and he ends up not having to serve that full sentence, then, that'd be great. But I just don't know California, what they do with gun offenses, because I know that they're very strict on their gun laws. I guess kind of stepping away from the political, and that was just something that was big that I wanted to talk about, because obviously the guy was the UFC heavyweight champion, which is, they're considered the baddest man on the planet. So I wanted to just touch on that real quick. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at UFC 272. Starting in the early prelims. Sorry, my phone is going off. Open my monster. So, in the early prelims, some of the fights that stick out to me, obviously be on the lookout for Devontae Smith, super flashy. He's fighting Ludovic Klein. In the flyweight division, Tim Elliott versus Tagir Ulambekov. And I'm going to go with Tagir in this fight just because Tim Elliott is very hit or miss. Tagir is 14-1 right now. Obviously doesn't have as much UFC experience as Tim Elliott does. But Tim Elliott's he's like that guy who's just super inconsistent. It's kind of like our conversations that we had with who is it that's we always reference as being super inconsistent? Oh, Bobby Green. But I'm gonna go with Tagir in that fight. Headlining the early prelims is Brian Kelleher versus Umar Nurmagomedov. And Brian Kelleher he's kind of been like on a resurgence. He's coming off of a win of Kevin Kroom, Domingo Pilarde. He lost to Ricky Simon last year, beat Ray Rodriguez, lost to Cody Stamen in 2020. So he's kind of been up and down and up and down. And Umar, it's like going against those Dagestani guys. It's kind of like, I just don't think I can do it. So I'm gonna go with Umar in this fight. He's coached by Khabib, so I mean, those guys at American Kickboxing Academy, absolute beasts, and especially Khabib as a coach. I think he's only lost one fight as a head coach, so be on the lookout for that one. I think Umar is going to do what the Dagestani style, takedowns, ground and pound, lots of top pressure, attempt multiple submissions, if not go for the TKO in that one. So I'm going to go Umar. In the prelims, that was another thing that I wanted to point out. The Jessica Ai and Manon Fiorot fight got canceled. I believe Jessica Ai got hurt. So, yeah, that one's off, but it was also kicking off the early preliminary card. In the prelims, I'm not going to pick the only fight that I really wanted to talk about in the preliminary card was Marina Rodriguez versus Yan Xiaonan, because I believe this is number 3 versus number 4. Marina Rodriguez is coming off of wins against Michelle Watterson, Mackenzie Dern, Amanda Hebas, which Amanda Hebas was on a roll. Recently, her only loss recently was against Carla Esparza, and that was in 2020. Yan Xiaonan, on the other hand, she is coming off of a loss to Carla Esparza as well by TKO. That was last year. She did beat Claudia Gadelha, and she beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz, as well as Angela Hill. So it's going to be interesting to see because, this is a title eliminator. I believe whoever wins this fight is going to be fighting Rose or Carla Esparza next, because my understanding is Carla Esparza and Rose are that's like the scheduled fight. So it should be interesting. I'm going to go with Marina Rodriguez in this one. Yan, she's coming off of that loss last year to Carla, as I said, and that was by TKO, whereas Marina lost by decision to Carla Esparza, and I know there was significant time in between those fights. So obviously Carla Esparza improved at some point because she's fighting for the belt next. But I like Marina Rodriguez in this fight. I think that she's just an all-around better fighter. And I think that, honestly, I would just be interested to see Marina versus Rose and how that would play out, because I think Marina has a better ground game, whereas Rose has the better striking, so it'd be, that striking versus ground attack. Another fight that you need to pay attention to is the Jalen Turner and Jamie Malarkey fight. I'm not going to make a pick just because I like both guys and I'm interested to see how it goes. But that's headlining the preliminary card. All right. And now kicking off the main card. It is going to be Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. And I'm going to go with Sergey Spivak because I never go for Greg Hardy, because even if I think he's going to be the one that wins, I just don't like Greg Hardy. I think he's a piece of garbage and he's a terrible human being. And that's pretty much my only reasoning behind why I want Sergey Spivak to win. I do think overall Sergey is the better technical fighter. I think he's better all around. Greg Hardy, we haven't seen him since he got knocked the fuck out by Tai Tuivasa. So Sergey, I think if it were to go to the ground, Sergey would be in control there. I think on the feet, he just needs to withstand some of those heavy shots like Tai Tuivasa did. Obviously, Tai got clipped by Greg in their fight, and he was kind of wobbly at some points. But, it's the heavyweight division. All it takes is just one shot, and you can go out. So Sergey just needs to be smart, not take heavy shots, and he'll win. Like I said, he's an all-around better fighter, more technical, has more weapons in the fight. So I think Sergey's going to win that one. And I did way more of a in-depth analysis than I needed to. I just strictly don't like Greg Hardy, so I'm never going to pick Greg Hardy. In the welterweight division, we've got Kevin Holland versus Alex Cowboy Oliveira, and I'm super excited for this one. Kevin Holland is... I'm cracking up with my Monster, sorry. Not sponsored by Monster, I wish, though. Kevin Holland is making his welterweight debut, and this is going to be interesting because Alex is dangerous on the ground, and we haven't really seen Kevin Holland do much on the ground. Obviously, he went out to Gilroy with Daniel Cormier and kind of did some American Kickboxing Academy just to work on his wrestling. And Kevin Holland ended up leaving, going, I believe, back to Texas. And so obviously, I would say that Kevin Holland is the way better striker. He's more flashy. He does the jumping stuff. He does the spinning stuff. Alex Oliveira is just a guy that's dangerous on the ground. If it goes to the ground, I think Kevin Holland might be in a lot of trouble. But I, even though I say that, I still think that, excuse me, I still think that Kevin Holland's gonna get the win. I think it'll. I don't think it's gonna be a finish. I think it's because Kevin Holland is fighting at 170, and he's never. We haven't seen him at 170. I don't think he's like completely depleting himself to get there, but it's kind of hard to tell what's going to happen with a guy when they go to a new weight class, unless it's like a light heavyweight going up to heavyweight or heavyweight going down to light heavyweight. Or you could do what Jared Cannonier did and start as a heavyweight and go to light heavyweight and then go to middleweight. So, I think Kevin Holland is going to be able to get this one done. I think keeping it on the feet, there's probably going to be times where he gets taken down. He's probably going to get put in some dangerous positions, but he does have a ground game in terms of jiu-jitsu. But when it comes to just getting taken down and controlled, that'll be one of the biggest factors in the fight. So I'm going to pick Kevin Holland, even though I think Alex, if he has a great game plan and he plays it safe, instead of... I think that's the biggest way that he wins the fight, Alex Oliveira. If he wins the fight, it's because he played it safe and he went for takedowns in ground, control on the ground. But Kevin Holland's who I'm going with. Big Mouth, as Dana White calls him. Next up, this is one of the fights that I'm most excited for. We have Edson Barboza versus Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty. This is, we've seen Edson Barboza has had kind of like a career resurgence. Obviously, he had a step back in the fight with Giga Chikadze. I believe he got finished. Was it a TKO by Giga? TKO in the third round. But he did get the finish of Shane Burgos. He got a win over Makwan Armakani and lost to Dan Ige. And, I think the biggest thing with Edson Barboza is the fact that he is just one of the most dangerous guys when it's on the feet. On the feet, he is one of the most dangerous guys. Whether it comes to leg kicks, body kicks, flying knees, we've seen him do it all. He's finished Beneil Dariush. His wheel kick of Terry Edom, I think, absolutely starched him. In this fight, that's where I think it's going to be, because I don't think Bryce Mitchell, I don't think he's going to get knocked out. I don't think he's going to get TKO'd. He might get submitted, but obviously Edson Barboza, his strong suit's striking. He's a Brazilian, so I'm sure he's got some significant Brazilian jiu-jitsu just growing up in Brazil. But Bryce Mitchell, he's a guy who likes to keep it on the ground. He likes to go. He's got multiple twister submission wins. I think he's the only person in UFC history with multiple wins by twister. We did get to see him strike a little bit more in his last fight, where I believe he landed over 100 strikes against Andre Fili. 100 total strikes, and he was 7 for 13 on his takedown. So I think that pressure, that's the most significant thing about him, is the pressure that he applies. So yeah, he got that win over Andre Fili. He got the win over Charles Rosa as well. So it'll all depend on what he does in terms of octagon control, I would say. Because if he wants to try and strike with Edson, he's going to get outstruck and he's going to get pieced apart. My guess would probably be with leg kicks. He's probably going to get eaten alive with the leg kicks. And if it goes to the ground, Edson's probably going to be in some positions that it's not going to be comfortable, but I don't think it's ever going to be to the point where he's in danger of getting submitted. Just because, as I said, he's a Brazilian guy. I'm sure he has tons and tons of experience in jiu-jitsu. Another thing is, you look at it, Charles Rosa and Andre Fili are the two guys that Bryce Mitchell has beat that have, like, they hold significant name value in terms of, like, recent fights. Whereas Edson Barboza is fighting, Justin Gaethje. He's fighting Beneil Dariush. He's fought Dan Ige. He's fought Giga Chikadze. He's fought Shane Burgos. He's fought. There's so many guys that he's fought, and you're like, holy shit! Like, he's fought the who's who. He fought Khabib. I can't remember. Did he fight Tony Ferguson? I can't remember. But either way, he's stood the test of time. He's still there. He went to 145. He looks phenomenal at 145. Obviously, he had a setback in his last one with Giga Chikadze. But, start 2022 is a new year. And I think that Edson is really going to lean heavily on the leg kicks. And by the time it gets to the ground, I don't think there's really going to be much time to, like, there's not going to be a significant push by Bryce Mitchell to really get a submission. I don't think there's going to be enough time. And Edson by decision is what I'm going to go with. I would say I'm going to go with unanimous decision in that one. In the co-main event, we have Rafael dos Anjos versus Renato Moicano. Obviously, last time that we saw Renato Moicano was a couple weeks ago against Alexander Hernandez. He picked up rear naked choke win over Alexander Hernandez. Looked phenomenal. In my breakdown for that one, I essentially said, I think if it stays on the feet, Alexander Hernandez is the better striker and he's faster. So, but if it goes to the ground, Alexander Hernandez is going to be screwed because Renato Moicano is dangerous as hell. And sure enough, went to the ground. The one thing that I was surprised with, though, is that Renato Moicano looked phenomenal on his feet. He looked really good. He looked crisp. He was fast. I think he looked faster and a better striker than Alexander Hernandez did. So he's stepping in for Rafael Fiziev in this one, in the co-main event. And I'm just glad that Rafael dos Anjos gets to fight, because the last time that we saw him fight was against Paul Felder in 2020. So that was, a short notice fight as well, because Islam Makhachev backed out. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. RDA has kind of been up and down. Submitted Kevin Lee, lost to Leon Edwards, lost to Michael Chiesa, beat Paul Felder, and then was out for a whole year. And then this fight with Rafael fell through, which I thought was going to be just an absolute banger on the feet. Rafael Fiziev likes to trade, so does RDA. We've seen what he can do against guys like Benson Henderson. We've seen what he can do and just fight like Kevin Lee. His fight with Kevin Lee, he looked great. And it's crazy to think he beat Robbie Lawler, he beat Neil Magny, Tariq Seferdine. He did lose to Tony Ferguson, but that's when Tony Ferguson was just on an absolute roll. And it was right after, or not right after, but it wasn't long after he lost the belt to Eddie Alvarez. So, he's fought the who's who. Whereas Renato Moicano, he has fought some of the who's who. Jose Aldo. He fought Korean Zombie. He fought Rafael Fiziev and lost. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does on short notice. I'm going to say, because RDA, both guys have the same amount of time to prepare for one another, but RDA's been in camp, whereas Renato Moicano was in a camp, got out of a camp after a big win. And I don't know, stuff like this, you just don't know what's going to happen. He could have stayed in phenomenal shape, or he could have taken a couple weeks off and was like, fuck it, I'm just going to live and enjoy myself. And then it was like, yeah, I'll take this opportunity. I think RDA is going to win. I'm going to say by unanimous decision in this one. But Renato Moicano is, if he gets this win, even though it's at catchweight, so I don't know how it's going to affect the rankings, but good on RDA for taking this fight, even though he doesn't have to. I think he just wants to get in there because the guy's 37 years of age. He doesn't have a whole lot of time left, and I think he knows that, obviously. I think he's past the prime of his fighting career, and he hasn't really gotten to display anything over the last couple years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And hopefully Renato Moicano got paid handsomely for stepping up and taking the fight. I'm sure he's going to have his moments in the fight, and I'm sure it's going to be a good fight. But I still think RDA, who's been in camp anticipating a fight, and based on the embedded series that I've, for UFC 272, he looks great. He looks like he's in phenomenal shape. He looks ready. So even though I would have loved to have seen RDA fight Islam Makhachev, this is still a good fight. So good on RDA for taking the fight, and good on Renato for stepping up. Man. And then the main event, we got Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. Oh, gosh. This is a hard one. This was a hard one for me. It's so hard. I actually got to take a drink of my Monster real quick because it's such a hard pick. Okay. Obviously, both of these guys know each other. Former training partners, as Colby would say, former best friend. And there's been a whole lot of personal shit. There's talks of kids, talks of wives, talks of ex-wives, talks of, your camp. Colby and Jorge both got kicked out of ATT, but Jorge was brought back. It was allowed back. And Colby's at MMA Masters now, and he's looked great. Obviously, both guys are coming off of losses to Kamaru Usman, where last time we saw Jorge, he got starched by Kamaru, and the last time we saw Colby, he was arguably... I think it could have gone 3-2 either way to Usman or Colby. Obviously, it came up 3-2 Usman. I think it was 3-2 Usman. And I for some reason in this fight, I don't really have like an in-depth analysis. The biggest thing is you got a guy who wrestles and applies pressure, and a lot of it. And then you got a guy who is a striker, is dangerous from anywhere, can land a flying knee and knock someone out in 5 seconds, a la fucking Ben Askren. And he's just a good striker. I don't think he's dangerous on the ground. I don't think Colby's going to be too worried about if it does go to the ground, what's going to happen. I'd say Colby's striking has gotten a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's like insane, like his strike. I'm not worried about Colby landing one shot and knocking Jorge out. Whereas I'd be more worried for Colby if he were to get struck by Jorge, because we've seen Jorge knock out Darren Till and Ben Askren just recently. He's got, TKO win against Donald Cerrone. He's served up Leon Edwards with a 3-piece and a soda, for Christ's sakes. So, yeah. With all that said, though, I think, just because Colby doesn't have... The biggest advantage in this fight is going to be Jorge and American Top Team. They all trained. Colby was there. So they know what to expect from Colby. I know that people change over time, but it hasn't been a significant amount of time. It hasn't been like this drastic, couple years. So how much has Colby changed in terms of his shot sequence going into takedowns, or the types of strikes that he likes to throw? Because with the counter striking of Jorge, Colby can get himself put in a very dangerous position, and Jorge can capitalize on that like nobody else. He's just super dangerous. And with that said, we've seen how Colby can bounce back, and the type of pressure that he can apply, whether it was against Robbie Lawler or against Tyron Woodley. And I think he's going to apply that pressure onto Jorge. I think even though, like, I don't have I like both guys. I like Jorge because he's dangerous. I like Colby because he's like your typical, like, WWE cuts a heel promo. Even if he doesn't mean half the shit he says, then I'm sure he's fake as fuck half the time. But, and his fighting style isn't super, it's not like his fighting style is one of my favorites to watch either. I mean, the name of our podcast is the Lay and Pray MMA podcast, but it's more just because it's facetious and funny. So, oh God, I'm gonna go Colby in this one, just because I think the wrestling, I think the pace that he puts on Jorge, he's probably gonna get tired. And I know Jorge has a gas tank, but nobody's got a gas tank like Colby. Like, maybe Cain Velasquez at sea level. But Colby puts it on, and he does it. He's a volume striker. So he's going to put that pressure on Jorge. He's going to make Jorge feel his weight. He's going to make Jorge, he's going to be carrying Colby at certain points in terms of, Colby's just going to apply pressure. And I think that's going to be the biggest key in the fight, is he's just going to push Jorge to the point where he's just exhausted. So I'm pumped to see how everything goes down. Obviously, they had the press conference today. I got to watch most of it. It was more annoying than anything because both guys were just cutting each other off. They wouldn't let each other finish. They kept talking over one another. People that were trying to ask questions couldn't even ask questions because they weren't paying attention to them. Dana White wouldn't let them get close in the face-off. Like, it was like, Jesus Christ. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at the weigh-ins tomorrow, and then obviously the fight on Saturday. They're probably not going to let them get close again tomorrow during the face-off. And I'm just super pumped. Obviously, this is a pay-per-view, and there's no title on the line, but that's completely okay with me. I'm pumped because there's nothing better than a rivalry. Obviously, we've got some absolute classic rivalries with John Jones and Rashad, John Jones and Quentin Rampage Jackson, John Jones and DC. It's like a lot of John Jones fights. Then you got, Chuck Liddell and Tito that we saw multiple times. So I'm super excited. This one is, extremely personal, and as Jorge Masvidal would say, it's super necessary. So that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for checking out the video. Make sure to like the video, comment on the video because it helps the algorithm a lot. Hit that notification bell so you can see when we post new content. If you're listening to us in podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, all those, Apple Podcasts, all the different podcast platforms that are out there. Make sure to check us out at YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube, check us out in podcast platform. That's going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time, peace.